Nothing lasts forever, even cold November rain. A little shout out to Guns N' Roses as we kick off another exciting episode of Everything Zen, where we discuss everything in the Zenescope universe, from evil heroes to Grimm Spotlight, Jasmine, Possessive, the Black Knight, and so much more. This is Zenescope. I'm your host, Mark Sells, and we're so glad to have you along with us for our November edition of Everything Zen. November is often referred to as a transitional month because in the southern hemisphere, spring gives way to summer, and in the northern hemisphere, fall gives way to winter. As Game of Thrones' Jon Snow proclaimed, winter is coming. We know what's coming with it. In Finland, November is called Marrasku, which means Month of the Dead, a reference to all the seasonal trees and plants losing their leaves. And in Mexico, on Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, November begins with a celebration of deceased loved ones, who make their triumphant return on November 1st. In the classic novel Little Women, Louisa May Alcott wrote, "November is the most disagreeable month in the whole year." And I'm pretty sure William Shakespeare would agree, because it's also the one month that he never mentioned, not a once, in a single play or sonnet. The musician Morrissey even sang, "November is a time which I must put out of my mind. November spawned a monster." So where is the November love? In November, we celebrate veterans, Election Day, sandwiches, book lovers, small businesses, and French toast. Plus, daylight savings time kicks in and we get that extra hour of sleep. It's also a great time to forego shaving to raise cancer awareness. Of course, it wouldn't be November without Thanksgiving, as Americans indulge and consume 704 million pounds of turkey every Thanksgiving. In total, between 2,500 and 4,500 calories, which is like eating about 8 Big Macs for just one meal. Interestingly, the very first TV dinner was created by Swanson by mistake, as a Swanson executive over-ordered turkeys for Thanksgiving back in 1953, leaving the company with over 260 tons of frozen fowl. To solve the problem, a Swanson salesperson suggested they package the leftovers like portioned meals on airplanes, which not only saved the company, but kickstarted the $1.2 billion frozen dinner market. And speaking of leftovers, 81% of Americans prefer Thanksgiving leftovers to the meal itself. More memorable days in November include the Motion Picture Association of America introducing the first film rating system on November 1st, 1968, with ratings such as G, M, R, and X. On November 5th, 1935, Parker Brothers launched the board game Monopoly, which we affectionately refer to as Grimmopoly here at Zenescope. Will Byers from Stranger Things disappeared on November 6, 1983, and everyone's favorite animated yellow bird, Tweety Bird, aka Tweety Pie, debuted in Tale of Two Kitties with Bob Clampett as the character's creator on November 21st, 1942. It seems like just yesterday, but Pixar's Toy Story was released on November 22nd, 1995, becoming the first feature-length film to be created in its entirety using computer-generated animation. And last but not least, on November 29th, 1972, Atari released Pong as an arcade game, although it wouldn't be until around 1977 that the first video game console for the home would be released. Famous November birthdays include Emma Stone, Leonardo DiCaprio, Demi Moore, Martin Scorsese, Goldie Hawn, Scarlett Johansson, Jimmy Kimmel, Ming-Na Wen, and Ryan Gosling. Coming up on this month's podcast, we're discussing Zenescope's resident mage and Zen master, Shang. Noah's got some sensational Shang-themed prizes to share with you in a little bit, and we'll be joined by Zenescope co-founder and president, Joe Brusha, to learn more about the mentor to the guardian of the Nexus. Later on, we'll be joined by talented musician and actress, Schuyler Fisk, who delivers on both fronts this month with the release of a new film, Sam and Kate, and a brand new album, We Could Be All Right. That's all coming up on this magical, festively fall and thankful edition of Everything Zen. And it all starts right now. I am a sorcerer, I have magic, and I use it for you, Arthur, only for you. From the fantasy adventure TV series Merlin, based on the English legend of King Arthur. Both King Arthur and Merlin were introduced by 12th century British author Geoffrey of Monmouth in the History of the Kings of Britain, written in 1136. While relaying the history of Britain from its first settlement by Brutus of Troy to Julius Caesar's invasions, the work has widely been debunked by historians, but the popularity of King Arthur and the tales of Merlin the magician live on to this day. Interchangeably, magicians have often been referred to as wizards, witches, warlocks, enchanters, sorcerers, druids, and mages. In the Dungeons & Dragons world, Gary Gygax introduced the term magic user as a generic term for practitioners of magic to avoid any reference to wizard or warlock. In medieval lore, the wizard often appears as a wise old man and acts as a mentor, not just Merlin, but Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings, Dumbledore in Harry Potter, and not just for forces of good, but evil as well. Villains like Saruman and Voldemort in the very same series counteract the heroic magicians. These characters were so crucial to pulp fantasy that they helped establish a new genre of fiction called sword and sorcery. Historically, magicians have also been known to wield rare and precious materials, like crystal balls, rare herbs, and elements like mercury, to perform magic. Magic wands and staves have also been widely used, the earliest of which came from Homer's Odyssey, as Circe transforms Odysseus's men into animals. And who could forget Gandalf breaking Saruman's staff and stripping him of power in The Lord of the Rings? Or Harry Potter breaking the Elder Wand in the Deathly Hallows to make peace within the wizarding world. Meanwhile, Zenescope's resident mage and warrior, Shang, made his first appearance in Grimm Fairy Tales number 16 back in July 2007 as mentor to the guardian of the Nexus, Selah Mathers. And over the years has continued to provide guidance and leadership to Selah's daughter, Sky, throughout Volume 2 of Grimm Fairy Tales. In early 2020, his backstory was finally filled in during a 3-part self-titled series that detailed the war for the imperial throne and a dynasty rival that turns out to be the legendary warrior Mulan. To dig deeper into the Shang storyline, Chinese fairy tales, his early beginnings, magic, and mentorship, we'll be joined by co-founder and president Joe Brusha. But right now, let's check in with Noah to see what Shang-themed prizes you could win if you enter our November podcast Word of the Month contest.
Hey everybody, how's it going? It's time once again for everybody's favorite part of the podcast. That's right, I'm talking about Everything Zen's Word of the Month contest. Phew. Sorry. I am just so excited because it's time once again for my favorite part of the podcast, Zenescope's Word of the Month contest. Anybody can enter and anyone can win. To play, all you have to do is listen for this sound. When you hear it, we'll reveal this month's secret word or phrase. Email us at info@zenescope.com with that secret word or phrase, and you'll automatically be entered into our raffle. One lucky first place winner will be randomly selected to receive the grand prize, a signature Shang Super Starter Set, celebrating our character of the month, Shang. This includes the first 3 issues of the Shang miniseries, in addition to the Shang blank sketch cover, limited to 75 copies. But hold your horses, because 2 second-place winners will also be randomly selected to receive issues 1, 2, and 3 of that Shang miniseries. And if you don't win, no worries. A handful of runner-ups will be arbitrarily assigned discount codes that can be used to get comics, collectibles, and more, all available on our web store. Don't forget to send that secret word or phrase to info@zenescope.com for your chances to win. But remember, only 1 submission per person. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Noah. Now it's time to visit the Imperial Dynasty and explore the man, the myth, the legend of Shang. And for that, we're bringing back Zenescope co-founder and president, Joe Brusha. Joe is here to talk about the inspiration behind Zenescope's leading mage, or magician, if you will, Shang. How did he become the mentor to Sela and Sky? Where did his magic come from? What are his greatest strengths and weaknesses? His relationship with Mulan? And what's in store for him in 2023 and beyond? We are here on the November edition of Everything Zen and are joined by Zenescope's president, co-founder, and Shang sensei, Joe Brusha. Joe, welcome back.
Thanks for having me again.
Shang first appeared in Grimm Fairy Tales number 16 in July 2007 as part of the Little Miss Muffet, who sat on a tuffet storyline. Where did his character come from? What was the inspiration behind Shang?
So at that time, we had introduced Sela as a character, and she really didn't have any kind of backstory or history, and she didn't know her own origins. She was just this keeper of the fairy tale book, and she didn't even know she was a guardian of mist at that point. So we needed her to have a mentor, and that going back that far, I don't remember exactly why we decided on Shang. It probably has something to do with watching Kung Fu as a kid, maybe. And I always, and then all of the Kung Fu movies, I used to watch, every Sunday they had a thing called Black Belt Theater on, and probably a little bit of the Karate Kid, but they always, you had that kind of Mr. Miyagi, guide and mentor. Most characters, if you look at any heroic character, they usually have some kind of mentor. Luke Skywalker has Obi-Wan Kenobi, and so we wanted to give her a kind of mentor. We also needed to reveal some of her history and get her up to date on where she was, because she had like this memory loss. So that's why we introduced Shang at that point.
More than 15 years of Grimm. How would you describe Shang's recurring role in the Grimm universe? Would you say he's more of like a Professor X than an actual member of the X-Men?
Yeah, he's kind of the patriarchal head of the Grimm universe, I guess, and he is there to mentor and train highborns with powers, and keep the realms in line and help the guardians of each realm, mostly Earth and mostly first Sela and now Sky. So he's kind of the grandfather of I guess, the Grimm universe in a lot of ways, both in look and in actions.
As a master mage, what are some of Shang's greatest strengths and greatest weaknesses?
Strengths, he has a lot of wisdom. He's a wizard with spellcasting ability. He has a pretty cool flame sword that he can summon from another plane. Weaknesses, maybe he's old. I don't know that we've explored a lot of his weaknesses. Maybe he's a little bit too much of a good-hearted, and doesn't like to be too tough on people. But not too many weaknesses that we've explored at this point.
Well, speaking of weaknesses, and also sort of connecting the tie to Obi-Wan Kenobi, Shang appeared to be killed by Cindy in a battle against the Dark One. How did he survive that? And even more so, does anyone really die in the Zenescope world?
So he did die, and he was resurrected by a mysterious godlike deity who we really never revealed. It's still of a mystery, but he was dead. He was resurrected to come back and help again in his role as the kind of the mentoring of the Grimm universe. I think that death is a little bit more permanent in the Zenescope universe than it is maybe for some other comic book companies. Sela died, God, I guess 4 or 5 years ago, and we haven't brought her back. Not to say that we won't, but I think it's it's always fun. I mean, almost any entertainment that plays with these tropes, is death really always permanent? I don't think so. But we try and raise the stakes a little bit more. I know there's characters. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head other than Sela, like major characters that we killed that we didn't bring back. But I know, secondary characters, and once they're gone, they've been pretty much stayed gone. So Shang is the one lone resurrection, or Belinda. Belinda was another character that died and we never resurrected. So again, not to say that we won't, but I think it's a little more permanent than in other comic book companies.
Last month, in discussing Cinderella, we revealed that some of Cinderella's earliest origins came from West Asia, Chinese folk tales that go way back, long before the Brothers Grimm, and include stories about Confucius, the Dragon Princess, the Nodding Tiger, 8 Immortals, and so many more incredible stories. Has Zenescope ever considered expanding into more Chinese fairy tales?
A little bit. I mean, we did the Shang Mulan story, but I don't think. I think we're trying to stick more with the Western, and we've moved away from kind of the classic fairy tale formula that we've used in the past. Not to say that we're not influenced by Indian mythology and Greek mythology, and I think we'll take anything that we can find inspiration. As we're doing the H.P. Lovecraft Cthulhu mythos right now. If it's a cool story and it's in the public domain, we probably will look at it. I mean, most stories are derived from some other tale that was told or some kind of mythology. So I do like the Asian, more Japanese culture and some of the cool mythology they have there, or at least the look of the mythology. So you never know what's going to come up.
In 2020, Shang earned his own limited series. After all these years, what made him ready for his own series?
Well, I think, as you said earlier, he's been in the Grimm Universe for 15 years, always as more of a secondary periphery character. And we kind of wanted to flesh him out a little bit more and give him a little bit of history. So that was really, I like him as a character. I know we do a lot of female characters, but I think that he's a cool, again, grandfather-like character that has a lot of cool powers that we never really explored. And where did he come from and how did he become this all-powerful maid? So we wanted to just expand on that.
You mentioned Mulan, and she was a critical part of Shang's 3-part series. How is she different than the legend portrayed by Disney, and will we see more of her down the road?
Yeah, I think that story was pretty much, and I didn't write it, but I remember plotting it and reading it. But I think it was a big departure from the Disney story. I mean, it wasn't her trying to join an army. It was more her and Shang going on a journey to confront Intimus, and then to confront a demon back on Earth that was trying to take over the dynasty that Shang was ruling. So I think it was a really big departure. It was more about Shang, and but it was cool also to bring in we always try and bring in any kind of known characters from mythology if they have potential in that way. So will there be more of her? I'm sure there will at some point. I know we talked about a second follow-up series. I don't know if it'll be next year, but sometime down the road, hopefully we'll get back to Mulan.
Zenescope is known, of course, for having the largest cachet of female-driven comics in the world. While there are a few male characters like Death Force and Zodiac, most popular characters continue to be Robin, Belle, Liesel, Skye, etc. What are your thoughts on strong male characters versus strong female characters in the Grimm universe?
So I think that we never set out to have just focus on female characters. It just kind of evolved that way. With the Grimm fairy tales, and then doing a lot of just, I guess, with Robin, we did kind of a gender switch there. And they just were popular. So we stuck with it. But I do think that I'd like to see us evolve into some more strong male leads. Right now, I think all of our titles are female. All of our regular titles are female driven. So maybe we'll try a male but when we write a story or when we come up with something, I don't think we're ever going, oh, we need to have a strong female character. We need to have a strong male character. The stories just work themselves out. And I particularly like Zodiac as a character. I really like Talisman as a character in the Mystere series. It's just the way it's kind of worked out. No grand plan to that. And it seems to be working out good. But I do think we need to, kind of focus on male characters here and there.
In the spirit of magic and magicians like Shang, do you have a personal favorite magician of all time, and why?
I don't know that I have a personal favorite. I mean, I remember watching some Houdini stuff when, growing up and hearing about that. I like David Blaine. I've watched a bunch of his like street magician special, street magic. I think it's fascinating. I want to go. There's a magic show in New York that I just heard about that is really cool. I think all that stuff is very fascinating. David Copperfield. But I wouldn't say I particularly have. Like I said, David Blaine's the guy that I'm most familiar with watching those street magic shows. They're just the way that they can perform magic, in quotes, is just fascinating to me, and the way that they have to think about those tricks. The other show I really liked was, I don't know if you remember, the one that was the Magician's Secrets, and they had the Magician in the Mask, and the Skinner from the X-Files was the narrator, and they revealed how all these tricks were done. I love that show. I thought that was really fascinating. And I didn't think they were giving anything away, because as the magician who was hidden was saying, this is the way to evolve the tricks to make them even more complicated and harder to solve. So, and also that movie, what was the movie with the Four Horsemen? That was a good one too. So I like magic. I just don't know that I have a particular favorite magic magician.
So on the next live stream, will you be catching a bullet with your teeth?
No, I feel like when I was maybe 12, I remember I had a birthday party, or I think it was mine, one of my sisters, and we had a magician. My stepfather at the time was friends with a magician, and he came and did all these tricks. And I was more focused on, I know how you did that, and I didn't know how he did it. And I think I tried to do some magic after that, and I was just very bad at it. Couldn't manipulate the cards, so I was like, this ain't for me. So I'm not catching any bullets. The sleight of hand stuff is not my forte.
Well, in typical Zenescope fashion, the Shang limited series ended on a cliffhanger. Will we see more of Shang in 2023? What's next for him?
Well, I mean, he's playing a very prominent role in Grimm Fairy Tales right now. He's back at Arcane Acre, heading up the school there. So I think that at this point, he's kind of here to stay in the Grimm Universe, and he'll always be very active and doing different missions. I mean, sometimes it seems like when some of the characters need him most, he's off doing something else, but I think that makes it fun. So, but yeah, he's a firm fixture. I don't know that we'll do another mini series at some point, but you never know. But he's here to stay for sure.
Well, Joe, thanks again for stopping by and giving us the 411 on Shang. We'll let you get back to your imperial throne as the master mage of Zenescope.
Yep, maybe I'll practice some card tricks. Try and get better at my magic. All right, thanks, Mark.
If you'd like to learn more about Shang, stop by Zenescope.com, and midway down the homepage, you'll see a section entitled Shang 101. You'll see many of his appearances in Grimm Fairy Tales over the years, as well as his limited series with Mulan, and much more. That's Shang 101 on Zenescope.com. Moving forward now, let's take a look at some of the exciting events coming up on the Zenescope calendar for November 2022. This month's new releases start with A Return to Oz by the Wicked Witch of the North, and two great graphic novels, Devil's Road and Van Helsing, Eve of Oblivion. If you want to see your favorite Grimm Universe heroines and villainesses spreading some holiday cheer, check out Grimm Fairy Tales 2022 Holiday Pinup Special. Some of the industry's top artists contribute gorgeous pinups of Grimm's most popular characters. Available starting on November 9th. Meanwhile, Belle finds herself in a deep freeze, and Liesel, Robin, and Skye all discover creatures lurking in the shadows in Van Helsing Rites of Shadows, Robin Hood Last Stop, and Grimm Fairy Tales Volume 2, Number 66, releasing mid to end of the month. The new metal comic, metal cards, and sticker set have all been released for November and are available for subscription on Zenescope.com, along with the new 2022 Collectors Club editions for board game cosplay and catch 'em throughout the month. And Carla Cohen's fantasy series returns on Fantasy Friday, November 18th. And speaking of Carla Cohen, she's our November featured artist of the month. She has a sticker set, 7 new metal cards, and 5 new art prints, any 3 of which are available for just $40 throughout the month. Starting at 6 p.m. Eastern on November 23rd, Zenescope's annual Black Friday sale begins and runs through Saturday the 26th. It's an incredible store-wide sale that includes discounts on all your favorite comics, metal cards, merchandise, and more. Plus, free limited edition Paul Green Black Friday collectibles with various minimum purchases. And stick around for our incredible follow-up on Cyber Monday, November 28th. More discounts and a Cyber Monday grab bag full of surprise goodies. And lastly, for one day only this month, we've got our Fall Fest Virtual Con on Thursday, November 17th from 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Ralph, Jason, Noah, and Casey will have exclusive collectibles, interviews, games, giveaways, and more. That's Thursday, November 17th from 6 to 9. Set your calendar reminders right now. Our podcast word of the month is here, and in honor of Shang, mages and magicians everywhere, we're going with one of the most recognizable names of all time, and that's Merlin. King Arthur's most trusted advisor, prophet, magician, and friend, created by Geoffrey of Monmouth. The November podcast word of the month is Merlin. Our featured guest this month is Schuyler Fisk, an incredible singer-songwriter and actress with Hollywood pedigree. She's the daughter of production designer Jack Fisk and Academy Award-winning actress Sissy Spacek. And she's built an impressive resume on her own. Just like her mother, Schuyler picked up guitar at an early age. By 15, she was on a 2-year tour with Joshua Radin. Together, they recorded a duet called Paperweight, which was featured on film soundtracks like The Last Kiss and Dear John. More songs for TV and film followed, and in 2009 she released her debut album, The Good Stuff, which hit number 1 on the folk charts. A second album called Blue Ribbon Winter dropped in 2011, along with a holiday EP, and her long-awaited third album, We Could Be All Right, releases this very month. On the acting side, Schuyler has starred in Snow Day, One Tree Hill, and Orange County alongside Colin Hanks and Jack Black. And she was in More Good Company and Gus Van Zant's romantic drama, Restless, as well as the adaptation of Nicholas Sparks' The Best of Me, with James Marsden and Michelle Monaghan. This month, she's accompanying her mother and Dustin Hoffman and his son Jake, and Sam and Kate, a small-town dramedy with a lot of heart. I sat down with this dual threat to talk about family life in Virginia out of the Hollywood hustle and bustle, music inspirations and creations on her latest album, We Could Be All Right, and working with her mom, Dustin, and Jake on the indie darling, Sam and Kate. Here's what Schuyler had to say. Today, we are absolutely delighted to be joined by the incredibly talented Schuyler Fisk. Schuyler, welcome to Everything Zen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I want to start by asking you about your childhood and your parents, obviously, because both are in the entertainment business. Your father as a production designer and your mom, of course, the legendary Sissy Spacek. What was your childhood like? Did it feel normal, a little strange, or just right?
I mean, to me it felt normal because it is all I've ever known. And I mean, I feel like I had a really wonderful childhood. I spent a lot of time with my family. When they were working, we would go with them, and it was fun to see. I mean, looking back now, of course, I appreciate and recognize what an incredible gift it was to be able to see them in their, elements, doing their art and seeing their process. And it's certainly imprinted on me and how I work. So yeah, but at the time I never really realized it was different. I know there was a moment as I got older in middle school where I'm like, yeah, this is different than my friends, but it seemed normal to me.
Right. Well, and did you live in Virginia throughout your childhood, through your teenage years?
I did. Yeah. I lived in Virginia, grew up there. I mean, we traveled a lot, of course, when my parents were working, but our home base was Virginia.
But that probably helped keep you grounded quite a bit, I would imagine, out of the hectic LA scene.
I think so. I think it definitely, when I was little, it's like this family joke because so badly, I mean, I just loved LA. I loved, like, as a little kid going to LA, and I loved everything that came along with that. And I just wanted to live there. I didn't want to live in Virginia. I wanted to live in LA, and I said, and I wanted to be an actress from a very young age. And I remember saying to my parents, why can't we live in LA? Why can't we live in LA? You're ruining my career. And then they said, well, honey, you one day you'll appreciate it, that you didn't grow up out here. And, there's smog. And I said, I love the smog. And that's like a thing they love to remind me about now. Because, of course, oh my gosh, I just think growing up where I did outside of, LA and Hollywood was just the greatest gift they could have given me.
Speaking of that, some kids, if their mother or father are doctors, they want to be a doctor too. And other kids would see that and they just want to go in a completely different direction. Did you feel any pressure to follow in your parents' footsteps? Were you fascinated by what they did? Or did you just kind of go about it where you just wanted to play and pave your own way?
I think just growing up, seeing that was an option of a life that you could have. It just seemed so, I was so interested in it. I did theater and, music as a kid. I don't think it was ever something I thought too hard about. It just seemed like obvious to me that I would go into the arts because I just, was so interested in it. It felt like, home to me in a way because I was so comfortable in those environments. And, thankfully my parents really supported that. Because, I've heard about a lot of actors whose children want to go into acting and they don't want them to.
Right.
And, my parents definitely didn't want me to get into it too young or like go full on into it too young. Because I did do some acting as a youngster, but, they wanted me to have as normal of a childhood as I could under the circumstances while still being able to, live my dreams, if you will. But
right.
It was a nice balance, I feel.
Apart from your family, who or what inspired you as a young girl and what inspires you today?
As far as music is concerned, like when I got older and started writing my own music, I would say like the person whose music I heard that I was like, really, really, it just moved me into a way of like, I want to do that. I'm just so moved by this and it makes me feel something was Bonnie Raitt.
Amazing.
She's just so amazing. And I'm such a huge fan. And I just remember being like, I want to write songs. I want to sing songs. She's so cool. She just like had this power, she really said something. And as far as acting, I'm not really sure. I really loved movies and the storytelling behind it. And I love the idea of becoming someone else. And, also because my dad was, like you said, on the other side of the camera doing production design, have always been really enamored by the whole collaboration of something like a film or a TV show. It really is so important that every single person that's contributing is, connecting on this common goal, and everyone's important. So I loved seeing what he did and how that just created the world in which you live in as a character. So I always, and I'm just as interested, I would say as the things that happen on the other side of the camera as the things in front of the camera.
Yeah.
So I think the whole thing has always been really intriguing to me and exciting. The idea of creating something that wasn't there. And I think now, it's those same things. It's just I'm continually inspired by, the things going on around me, the new art that's coming out, by stories I hear. I hear stories all the time, just like people, like, meeting someone at the grocery store and they'll tell me something about their day. I'm like, that's going to be a song that I write.
Write it down.
Yep.
Speaking of music, I mean, both music and acting have been a very big part of your life. Have you ever felt like you had to choose one over the other? Do you like one better, or do you love having, the balance between the two?
Yeah, I love the balance. I love being able to do both because I feel like they sort of flex different muscles for me. But it's funny, I never have thought about like, oh, I have to choose one. But it's like a question that everyone asks me, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I think I've just sort of I'm just happy to be doing whichever thing I'm doing at that moment. And whenever I'm in the midst of it, that's my favorite. My favorite thing is, when I'm making a movie, it's acting. And then when I'm making a record, it's music. So it's really fun when I get to combine those two things.
Your website teases a new album for November entitled We Could Be All Right. What can you tell us about it? Was there an overarching theme? What were your motivations to put the album together?
Yeah, I mean, this is a record that I've really been working on for so many years now, and really in writing for a while. And I think, for this record, I really thought a lot about the innocence that you have when you're a child, and what you kind of think your life will be, and what your expectations are, and what you think success is, and all those things. And then when you get to like wherever you think that place is, when you're older, and then when you kind of reassess, like, were those goals realistic, or is that really what makes me happy? And I think just like, or is this where I thought I'd be? And, I think that life is equally more beautiful and more difficult as you get older, or so it has for me. And I think that, those two things really are big themes in this record. And I the cover art is me as this little girl. And I chose that because I look at that picture and I see this young girl that just had no idea all that was to come, and all that we would, have to go through in life. But I think the overarching thing is it's a question and it's a statement. Like, we could be all right. It's like, we could be all right, but it's also like, we could be all right.
We're going to be all right.
It's hopeful, but it also like deals with some major things.
Well, I think you probably answered this already, but some songwriters write what they know and are deeply personal. Others, like Bruce Springsteen, craft fictional characters and stories with such depth. Music can be frivolous, it can be fun, it can also be cathartic. Where predominantly does your songwriting fit in? A little bit of each, or does it veer in one particular direction most frequently?
I mean, predominantly it comes from, these songs are born from my own emotion and like from a real place of real stories from myself, but not for every song. I mean, there are some songs on the record that are not about me, that are not autobiographical, but they are real stories, but they're not necessarily mine. But I didn't like just make them out of thin air. And then I have a song in this movie that I have coming out called Sam and Kate. And I wrote a song for the movie as my character, Kate, and I play it in the movie. And the song is called Life After. And that was a really fun song to write because it was specifically from this character's point of view and from what she's been through and is going through in her life. And it's very specific to that. And but again, it was coming from like this real story. I mean, it's not, I guess, not a real story because it's from the script, but to me, it was like this real story. And so it almost felt like I was writing about myself, but actually I was just being her.
In character. Yep.
Yeah.
You've had a lot of different projects in film and television over the years. Orange County, which I loved, One Tree Hill. What is Sam and Kate about, which releases in November? And who do you play?
Yeah, Sam and Kate comes out November 11th. I'm so excited. I play Kate. For me, the movie, I mean, it's about so many things, but to sum it up, it's really about, you know, family relationships and all relationships and how they change, how those dynamics change as you get older and you go through more. And, you know, I think specifically for, well, I guess for all the characters, and I think for everyone, but just pertaining to the song I wrote, which is called Life After, I think of this movie a lot about like the things that we all as individuals go through in our lives that sort of, you know, draw this line in the sand of your life. Like you have the before this happened and the after this happened, you know, before I lost someone important to me, after I lost someone important to me, you know, before I had children, after I had children, like those life events that really change you and how that affects the course of your life and then how that can connect us and also can pull us apart from people. So
I love that.
Yeah.
It looks like it was a very nimble production. There's a generational aspect to it. I mean, a small cast with you and your mom, Dustin Hoffman, and his son, Jake. And it was directed by Darren Lagallo, who is married to the producer, who just so happens to be Amy Adams. Did you know everyone beforehand? Was it a very family-oriented type of project? How did you get involved?
So actually, I did know Jake. We've been friends since our early 20s. We hadn't seen each other in moons, but through him, I had met Dustin a few times, but I wouldn't say like I knew him well. But it's so funny because back in the day, Jake and I used to joke about like, oh, that'd be so cool if our parents worked together one day, you know, not ever thinking like we could all work together. So that's pretty cool. So I knew Jake and was thrilled to be able to work with him. And I didn't know Darren, but got to know him obviously very well through the course of things. And Amy was obviously a part of that as well. And yeah, it felt like, you know, the cool thing was we signed on to do the movie mid-pandemic. So we couldn't go right into shooting. We had to wait like a couple of years. So we had the luxury of a couple of years to really talk and get to know these characters and figure things out before we were shooting, which was good because when we ultimately did shoot, we had a very tight schedule. So we had to show up prepared.
What was it really like working with your mom?
Oh, it was awesome. It was the best. It was so, I mean, the word easy feels like the wrong word, but just comfortable. And I mean, the cool thing is with my mom is just that, and with anyone you're really close to, I would say, you have this shorthand and you have this, you know, love obviously and like a comfortable vibe. So, you know, we could try things and talk about things in a way that felt like you couldn't embarrass yourself. You know what I mean? So it felt like an incredible amount of freedom there, you know, and we really trust each other. So it was just so nice. It just felt good and comfortable and wonderful. And I mean, I had a very similar feeling with Jake working. We were not as close as my mom and myself, but
Sure.
you know, anytime you go into something with like a history of someone where you have like a basis of like friendship and like where you're comfortable with each other, I think can be super helpful.
Do you have a favorite memory or moment from the making of Sam and Kate?
Oh man, that's such a good question. There's so many. I think, you know, one of the coolest things, one of the parts of the experience that I just think I'll never forget and that I'm so grateful for is the feeling of, you know, the four actors, Dustin, my mom, and Jake and I felt like we were really this like bonded team and we really had each other's backs. And I felt like we all had this goal of like, we're really trying to find the truth in all these scenes. And anytime one of us felt like we weren't feeling it, everyone kind of stopped and we're like, okay, let's figure it out together, you know, and to have someone like Dustin, you know, be on board to just help me figure out a moment that wasn't feeling right. And to be so kind and patient and giving. Every single one of us gave that to each other. And it was an experience that was so deeply meaningful to me. Just the respect between those four actors and the real sense of like camaraderie. Because I feel like when you are doing a scene and it's not working, it can either make everyone kind of like split apart, you know, and like
Right.
hate each other, or it can make you like really dig deep and figure it out and work together, and then you're forever bonded. And I
Right.
really feel like with these actors, that's what happened. And so for me, it wasn't just one moment, but there were multiple times where I felt like we really came together as a unit. And yeah, it was really cool. Really, really
Teamwork
cool. Teamwork makes the dream work.
What's the most valuable lesson or bit of advice you've taken to heart in your career?
I mean, I think there's, oh God, there's so many things that I've learned specifically from my parents. But I mean, I think from both my parents, they're really committed to the art of it. They've never thought about projects for anything other than doing something good. You know, they want to be truthful, and they want to do something good, and they're never going to they just aren't interested in phoning it in or any of that kind of thing. Like when they're invested in a project, they are all in, and they're consumed by it in, I think, the best way. To some people, they might think it's crazy, but you know, you just care so much, and you never give up trying to make it the best that you can. And I think, you know, just growing up with parents in the business that are going after that goal, they've been really good role models in that way. And I think also Jake has a similar story too. You know, he has that same fierce, you know, dedication to the things that he's a part of. And so that, and I think on the acting side, my mom has just been, you know, she's always kind of said to me, you know, you don't need to worry about overthinking exactly how your inflection is on a line, or how you're going to say something, or thinking, planning something out too much. I mean, you always want to be prepared, but then you have to just try, you know, to listen and to really just feel and think the things that your character is going through, instead of trying to act them. And if you think them and they're happening in your brain, then she said they will see it.
The holidays are coming up, and in 2016, you did a terrific Christmas EP, Sounds of the Holiday. It's Christmas, So We're Singing, by the way, is one of my favorite songs of yours.
Oh, thank you.
And a few years later, for Deck the Halls, there's an amazing photo of you with a drum set. What is your favorite Christmas song and why? And what's your favorite Christmas gift and why?
Oh my gosh, these are great questions. I love Christmas. I love Christmas music. I love Christmas movies. What is my favorite Christmas song? It changes. I got to tell you, the one that I really, as a kid, imprinted on me was Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You.
There you go.
I asked for that CD for Christmas. I got it. I listened to it on repeat. I read all the lyrics. I was obsessed. And it still just makes me feel good when I hear it. I think best gift is anything that's personal, comes from the heart, you know? It could be a drawing, or, you know, my dad was big on making presents for us as kids, cool. Which was always the most special. Anything that someone's put time into, I think, you know, the littlest thing, or something that helps you remember something important.
Well, it sounds like the remainder of the year is going to be very fun and very busy for you with the new film and the new album. Will there be a tour? What are your plans for the album's release?
Yeah, there's not one set up right now, but I would love to make that happen. And it would probably be in the new year. Yeah. And awesome. Everything would be on my website, and I'd post on the socials, which mostly now I feel like Instagram is the most reliable social media thing for me. I feel like I'm really tech challenged. So I'm trying to get up to date with all the other things, but.
Well, Instagram's a good place to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what 2023 looks like? Do you have New Year's resolutions, goals for the future?
Every year, one of my resolutions that I feel like I can never fulfill or get through is to drink more water. I remember it from time to time, and then I do it, and then I forget. So that's a big one. And I would like to see more friends and family in 2023. You know, since this pandemic, I feel like I really haven't seen in person and like hugged so many of the people that I love so much in my life. And I want to make an effort to do that. Yeah.
Schuyler, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Congrats on the new film and the album. We'll all be watching and listening.
Thank you so much.
If you'd like to see and hear more from Schuyler Fisk, you can check out Sam and Kate in select theaters right now. And you can revisit Orange County on Pluto TV and Amazon Prime. Meanwhile, all of her albums and EPs, including her latest, We Could Be Alright, are available on iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, and wherever you download and stream digital music. As for us, that'll put a close to this edition of Everything Zen, November 2022. A very special thanks to Noah, Zenescope co-founder, president, and Shang expert, Joe Brusha, and our featured guest, Schuyler Fisk. I'm your host, Mark Sells. Thank you for listening. Maya Angelou once wrote, "Be present in all things and thankful for all things." Here at Zenescope, we are truly thankful for all of you, our faithful Everything Zen listeners. Have a festive, filling, and fun Thanksgiving. We'll see you all again next month, right here on Everything Zen.